Welcome back to another episode of The Road Chose Me. My name's Dan Grech, and today a topic that I get asked all the time: what vehicles did I consider when I was setting out to drive all the way around Africa? So there's obviously lots of different choices on the market, and I did go into this trip intentionally set out to buy a vehicle knowing it was specifically for that purpose. So if you've ever wondered what vehicles did I consider, I'll go through all of the pros and cons and all the decision-making process now, which will help you figure out what vehicle meets your needs. So stick around, let's get into all the details right now. When I was planning and dreaming to drive all the way around Africa, I was sitting at work every day earning money, and I was actually just driving a rust bucket Subaru to work every day. So I knew for a vehicle I was specifically setting out to buy something for that trip. It didn't need to be a daily driver. It didn't need to serve double duty. I was expressly buying one for the Africa expedition. And so these criteria that I applied, I was starting from a blank sheet. I could have anything I wanted. And so when we go down the list, the number one vehicle consideration, or the number one choice, there is no question, it is a 70 series Toyota Land Cruiser. This is without a doubt the most common vehicle to drive around the world for overlanders, and certainly on the African continent, it outnumbers every other four-wheel drive vehicle, easily 2-to-1. In some countries, I would say it's 10-to-1. The 70 series Toyota Land Cruiser, it really dominates the global market for four-wheel drive vehicles. And certainly the United Nations, the Red Cross, all of those kinds of NGOs, they buy them by the thousands. There's fleets of them getting around Africa. All of the governments, any industry or any company like mining or forestry that wants to get remote in Africa, they're using the 70 series Land Cruiser. It is the one, it is the best. It's probably the most reliable, it has the best parts support, and certainly there's tons of aftermarket options too. Lots of companies out of South Africa and Australia, and even Europe, there's pop-up roofs, there's bumpers, there's suspension. Usually they come from the factory with 2 gas or diesel tanks. And they have a lot of really good diesel engine options too. Certainly the 1HZ straight 6 engine, non-turbo, this is probably the most reliable engine ever put in a four-wheel drive anywhere in the world. I've seen them in Africa being abused beyond belief for 500,000 miles, and they're still running as good as they did from factory. So that was easily the number one choice, but there's a huge reason that I didn't get one, and it's simply because you basically can't get one here in North America. I live in Canada these days, and lots of people live down in the US, and the 70 series Land Cruiser, it was never sold here as a factory option. So that means to get one, you have to do some sort of grey import. Here in Canada, it would have to be 15 years old. Down in the US, it would have to be 25 years old. And certainly they're around, people do bring them in and they are for sale. First problem with that is they are horrendously expensive, easily 3 or 4 times more than a comparable four-wheel drive that was for sale on the North American market. The next problem is parts and things are going to be harder to get here. You can't just walk into a Toyota dealer and get parts for an engine that they never sold in North America. Certainly the aftermarket products, the suspension, the bumpers, not as easy to get. All of those problems are certainly something to think about. And people ask me, why didn't I just go to another country and buy one? There's a whole range of reasons why that doesn't work. Lots of countries won't allow a foreigner to register a vehicle. Even if you could, once you're on the road, how are you going to renew the registration, the insurance? If you've got a carnet de passage, how are you going to renew that when you're far away? Once the trip is over, are you going to take it back to the country you bought it from and try and sell it there? All of these are reasons why buying internationally actually just makes your trip way more logistically complicated. On top of that too, North America, especially the US, it's pretty much the world's cheapest developed country in terms of parts and products that you can buy. So if you've got a four-wheel drive, if you want to add good tires, a winch, some bumpers, a fridge, maybe a pop-up roof and solar panels, those things are literally half the price in the United States as they would be if you tried to outfit your vehicle in Europe or in South Africa or wherever else you're going in the world. So certainly for me, when I was thinking about outfitting a vehicle, I was going to save $20,000 buying just a regular North American vehicle, and I was going to save another $20,000 buying all the accessories and all the upgrades here in North America. So while the 70 Series Land Cruiser, it is a fantastic choice, for people who live in North America, it kind of isn't very realistic or very practical, and that's why I didn't choose one. Second choice for a vehicle to drive all the way around Africa, I think again there would be no argument about this. It is the Land Rover Defender 110. This would be the second most common vehicle driven around the world by overlanders, and certainly to have an amazing reputation. They're really cavernous on the inside, way bigger than my Jeep is, and you know, they come with the 200 TDI or the 300 TDI diesel engines. Those things are fantastic. Little 4 cylinders, really reliable, and they just go all day long. Friends in Africa were getting close to 30 miles a gallon. And this is a big, heavy 4-wheel drive with a winch and big tires and a roof rack. They had tons of gear. They just cruise all day long. It's not a speed demon. You're not winning any land speed records. But for what it offers, the Defender 110 is a fantastic choice. Again though, why didn't I get one? It's the same story. They were actually sold in North America. I think 500 of them total were sold here. So other than that, you have to bring them in again as some sort of grey import. So again, they're going to be older. Again, they're really expensive, difficult to get parts for. All the same reasons that I didn't choose a 70 Series Land Cruiser, they all apply to the Defender 110 as well. And yes, I do have an Australian passport, or I could have organised with my dad to buy one in Australia and then maybe, register it and then ship it to wherever I was going, the start of Africa. But again, driving a different vehicle, registered in some rando country that doesn't match my passport or my driver's license. If you got it in Australia, the steering wheel is going to be on the right. And I've talked before about how right-hand drive vehicles are not ideal to go around the world. There are countries that won't allow them. So for me, again, I didn't want to buy a vehicle that just didn't exist in North America. Going down the list then, the third choice would be a Land Cruiser that was available in North America. And so that would be the 80 series or even the 100 series. And no doubt about it, I saw a lot of them getting around Africa, and they are a relatively common choice for overlanders. So I think they are an excellent choice. And certainly there is plenty of aftermarket. You can get pop-up roofs, you can certainly get suspension and bumpers and things like that. But there really was one thing that severely turned me off. And that is, when you buy them in North America, they've never come with diesel engines. So you have to run whatever gas engine they had, which is typically a big V6 or even a V8. And from what I've read online, once you kit them out into expedition trim, you add some bumpers, you add a fridge, your solar panels, all your camping gear, all your clothes, all your food. Once you're really that heavy, these Land Cruisers, they get about 8 or 10 miles per gallon, which is mind-blowing. That is about double the fuel consumption of what I drive. So not only would I have doubled the amount of gas that I had to buy, which is an enormous hit to my budget, I actually don't know if I could have completed the trip. I don't know if it would have been possible to carry enough fuel to drive to some of the places that I went to. At times I had like 35 gallons loaded on this and just made it distance-wise in the Congo, Lake Turkana in Kenya. To do that same segment in a Land Cruiser like that, I would have needed 70 gallons worth of gas. That is an enormous amount to carry. It's super heavy. Obviously, gas is flammable. And of course, I was in countries too that had shortages, and it was difficult to get gas and diesel sometimes. So, being able to buy 10 or 20 gallons maybe is doable. But if you show up and you say you want to buy 50 or 60 gallons, I think you're going to have a real problem with that. So as much as the 80 series or the 100 series, I think they're good choices. Getting 8 or 10 miles a gallon, it just totally negates that. And in my opinion, it actually makes them not workable at all. And it's a vehicle that I'll never drive because I don't have that amount of money to just burn on gas. And then going down the list, there are plenty of vehicles in North America that people think I should have considered. So certainly a Toyota Tacoma is one example. The new Bronco coming up, is just an example. Or even things like the Colorado or an F-150 or all of these kinds of vehicles. And the reason I didn't choose any of those is because they are simply not world vehicles. A lot of people think that the Tacoma is based on the Toyota Hilux, and that is simply not true. No Hilux has ever had the same engine as a Tacoma. No Hilux has ever had the same transmission. They certainly don't have the same frame. They are not the same vehicle at all. So if you take your Tacoma over to Africa, none of them exist. I never saw one on the entire continent. Same goes for a Tundra. They just don't exist. If you go into the Toyota dealer, they will not be able to get you parts. Chances are they can't diagnose if you have computer problems. All of that stuff, it essentially doesn't exist in Africa, which from my perspective makes it quite a bad choice. So as much as those vehicles are easy to buy for North Americans, and certainly if you're roaming around North America, yeah, maybe it's a good choice. If you're looking to go global, you need to do some research if your vehicle exists in the places that you're going to. And if it doesn't exist and there's just been no support for that vehicle, I would seriously reconsider taking it, because you're going to have a real problem if either you have a mechanical failure, or even if you just have a fender bender and crack the radiator or sort of minor things like that. You're going to have a real problem sourcing parts, and that's going to really undermine your trip and make it less enjoyable. So that brings me to the choice that I actually made, and it is the Jeep Wrangler Rubicon. And the reasons kind of speak to everything that I've talked about already. They are really easy to buy here in North America. Certainly they're inexpensive. This one that I drove around Africa cost me $18,000 all in. They're extremely capable from the factory. This Rubicon has front and rear diff locks. It has a low range transfer case, solid front axle. So it ticks all the boxes in terms of four-wheel drive capabilities. And obviously the aftermarket support for this is enormous. Everything you're looking at here, the front bumper, the snorkel, the pop-up roof, they were all designed specifically for this model of Jeep Wrangler. So they're all direct bolt-ons, and they're all made in North America. So as I said earlier, they're all relatively inexpensive. And then the final thing that a lot of people don't realize about the Wrangler is it is actually a world vehicle. And what's great is any country in the world that has a Jeep dealer, they definitely sold this exact Jeep with this engine, with this transmission, all of it identical. The axles, they are the same across the world. So while it's true there's no Jeep dealer in the Congo, there are Jeep dealers in neighboring Angola. So while I wouldn't have been able to get dealer support in every country in Africa, certainly every couple of countries there were dealers, or sometimes they're what they're called grey dealers, where the country doesn't officially have Jeep, but you can contact the dealer in the neighbouring country and they'll ship the parts that you need. And once I hooked up with some Jeep enthusiasts in South Africa, they were super excited. They were going to send me parts no matter what country I was in. So while on the surface people say Jeep maybe don't have the greatest parts support, in a funny sense, you're going to have way better parts support for this in Africa than you would for a Toyota Tacoma. Even though Toyota has great parts support in general in Africa, they only have it for vehicles that exist in Africa or that are common in Africa. They're not going to have parts for a vehicle that simply doesn't exist on that continent. So on the surface, it might seem like the Jeep Wrangler is a bit of a strange choice, and certainly it's an uncommon choice. But when you actually run through the reasoning, it turns out to be quite a smart choice to make. And as I proved, it worked really well, and I had an amazing expedition on a fraction of the budget if I had been driving some vehicle that I had to import for $100,000 or a vehicle that got 8 or 10 miles a gallon. All told, I think this was a really good choice. So I hope all of that has been helpful, and I hope it helps you see what criteria are worth applying to judge when you're looking at a vehicle to meet your overland needs. Obviously, if you're heading out for a weekend, it's not so critical. Even up to Alaska, you're probably going to be able to find parts and whatever. But if you're looking to cross the Congo, if you want to drive across the salt flats of Bolivia, these kinds of things are important, and you want to do some homework and some research and understand what's going to meet your needs. So if it's been helpful, do hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and I'd love to see your comments down below. What vehicle are you using, and how do you think it fits with everything I've just said? Am I crazy, or did what I just say make sense? And once again, thanks to all my supporters on Patreon. Not only do they get these videos, but by supporting me, they're getting behind the scenes access to my upcoming expedition. So today I've talked about the vehicle that I chose to drive around Africa. On Patreon right now, I'm talking about the vehicle that I've selected for my upcoming expedition to a new continent. And I'm running through all the same decision-making thoughts and ideas based on where I'm going, what vehicle makes sense and why have I chosen that vehicle. So if you're interested to find out more, there's a link down in the description. Head over to Patreon. From just $5 a month, you can get all of that information as well. So thanks very much for watching. Stay safe out there, and maybe I'll bump into you on the road.